G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, so we got another topic here. Again, a big one. You're going to hear this more from probably the Harley crowd and the cruiser crowd than you will from the sport bike crowd, but you might hear it from the sport bike crowd a little bit too. And it goes something along the lines of loud pipes save lives. Now, I used to kind of buy into this theory years ago when I used to have my 1948 Harley Davidson Panhead, and I had a set of beer cans on there, what they call the beer can style exhaust. Basically, there was no baffles in the thing, but it wasn't as obscene loud as, say, like a straight pipe, that type of thing. And I used to have some friends that thought that if they had straight pipes on there, they'd be safe. I had a friend with a Virago, he put straight pipes on it. Another friend with all the Harley friends I had, they put megaphone exhaust, two into two, two into one, or whatever it would be. And and then of course any friends I had that had sport bikes, they had Hindles and Yoshi pipes and stuff with like big cannons on there, really really loud stuff. Especially some of those old Hindles and Super Traps and whatever. They were loud when you really cranked them up. The exhaust I have on is a Triumph exhaust. It's the one up from the stock exhaust, so it still has a baffle in it, stuff like that. It's a nice sounding exhaust. Everybody's like, this bike makes a lot of friends wherever I go, and everybody's like, wow, that's a nice sounding exhaust. It's not obscenely loud. It just has a nice kind of growl, rumble to it, that type of thing. And one thing I do notice, yes, when I am riding, okay. The bike could be a bit drony at certain RPMs or whatever, and if you grab a fistful of throttle, yeah, it'll make a lot of noise. But that said, if I'm riding with somebody else, they can't hear me up behind me. And my cousin, for example, his bike, he's got an FC06 with stock exhaust on there, which is probably way quieter than mine. And if I'm behind him, he can't hear me. So right there, if he can't hear me on his bike, how is somebody in a car going to hear me? You know what I mean? Like, they'll hear you maybe when you're beside them, maybe when you're a little bit ahead of them, but whatever. Or if they're parked and you're coming up on them at a stoplight or something, they might hear you then. But 9 times out of 10, no, they're not going to hear you anyway. And you're assuming that the person isn't distracted by a radio. They might have a headset on, whatever it might be. And you're assuming that people are watching for you. And this is where, like some of my friends, they would change their pipes on, regardless of what kind of bike it was, years ago. They would, and it wasn't just my friend, but just, guys in general would be shooting the breeze. They're like, yeah, I put my pipe on, it's so loud, man, everybody's going to hear me coming. And then they tell you the stories about how they got cut off all day. You know what I mean? It's like, well, if it was so loud that everybody heard you coming, how did you still get cut off? You know what I mean? So then it kind of dawns on people that no, the loud pipes don't make a difference. People won't distinguish whether it's a motorcycle or a cement truck coming up behind them. If they're not paying attention, it won't really matter anyway. They won't hear you. They just simply won't hear you. And you can prove this point very easily by next time you're standing at a traffic light or whatever. I remember there was one time I was standing there waiting to cross, okay? And there was a city bus there idling away. Big honking diesel engine just sitting there thugging away, right? And there was a Harley guy came up. Now, when he passed me, I heard him. But the second he pulled beside the bus, I couldn't hear him. And he had loud pipes. And when the bus took off, I heard the bus more than I heard him. So again, that close of proximity, completely open with your ears, nothing hindering you whatsoever. I can't hear the guy on the other side of the car. I can't hear the bike on the other side of the bus or whatever. That type of thing. So loud pipes do not save lives. Defensive driving does. And I know some people, they're probably going to maybe slag me a bit. Oh, you got no cred on this or whatever. No, I do, because again, my Harley, it wasn't obscenely loud, but it was loud enough. And again, people would try to move into my lane while I was riding. I mean, at throttle speed. You know what I mean? And if they weren't looking at me, they wouldn't hear me. You know what I mean? Like, some of them would probably hear you. But most of the time, no, you still get cut off. You still get people not paying attention. And now, what's worse now, like 20 years ago, there were cell phones, but it's not like today where everybody's driving and texting. The other thing I found is people who wear hats never do shoulder checks. And if they don't do shoulder checks, even if they do hear you, they're not. It's not connecting. They say, statistically speaking, most motorcycles, when they get into an accident and the car driver's at fault, they say they didn't see the motorcycle. Even if they were looking straight at them, they didn't. It doesn't compute that you're a motorcycle. It's just it's an oddball object on the road, believe it or not. And when you drive a car and a motorcycle, the thing is, and you'll find yourself with this as well, is you'll acknowledge the motorcycle, but you can't anticipate the speed. So a lot of times when you see the bike, you're like, okay, well, I've got lots of time to pull out, but by the time you pull out, you're not anticipating that the guy's probably riding his bike a little bit too fast. And next thing you know, the guy's on the hood. And that's what happens. And I've done it several times where I'm like, okay, it'll probably take, just to experiment with myself. So I come to my intersection, I see a bike coming, and I'm on even a bike or on in a car, it doesn't really matter what I'm driving. And I'll say that it'll take 3 seconds before they get to me. And sometimes they get there 2.5, that type of thing. Or it'll take 5 seconds before they get to me. They're there in 3 seconds. And then when they go by, you realize how much faster they're actually cruising. So something coming straight at you, you can't judge it, and you can't hear it. So, I think going away from you, yeah, that's the only time you hear the exhaust is when it's going away from you. Very rarely you hear it coming at you. You will hear it a bit, but in the background noise, of 20 vehicles piled up at a intersection somewhere, you're really not going to distinguish where the loud pipes are coming from. Again, is it a cement truck? Is it a car? Is it a pickup truck? Is it a motorbike? Nobody really makes a connection until the bike is right on. And I know there's a lot of people, particularly on the Harleys, that believe that the loud pipes save lives, and you're setting yourself up for falsehood there. That you're trusting in something that really has no merit whatsoever. Because again, you can point to, you find me the guy with the loudest motorcycle in the world, whether it's a sport bike or a Harley, it doesn't really matter, or some, cruiser, whatever, it doesn't matter. I can guarantee you that guy's going to tell you how he got cut off at some point. The other day, I was riding, the other day, I guess it was the other week, I was riding and I pulled into a gas station and there was a bunch of bikers there and whatever. And of course there was this beautiful RSV4 Aprilia RF model, and he had the SC exhaust. And I don't know if you know what this thing looks like. It's just a pepper shaker on the end of a tube, right? And this guy, when he started that bike up, man, you felt like you were at the raceway. It was loud. You could feel the concussion from it and stuff like that. And when he took off, okay, sure, you could hear him taking off, and he was taking off with his group or whatever, and you could pick his bike out over the other group. And they got maybe about, they weren't even out of sight. They were maybe a couple of 100 feet, and a very quiet car. Now, this bike is super loud when there's nothing else on the road. This bike is super loud. But then this quiet car, where you couldn't even hear the exhaust, goes by, and you can hear the tires of that car louder than what the exhaust was. And you could still see these people riding it. And, okay, now one guy really cranked on it, you hear it. But you get what I'm pointing, like, it's just a drowning out of noise. There's no merit to distinction here, that this will guarantee that people will catch their attention and say, hey, you know what, that's a bike coming up. It doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So my old R60 BMW, for example, that thing was so quiet, like even at highway speed, you could hear the tires over the exhaust. It was that quiet. That thing didn't get cut off any more, any less than my Harley, which, was quite noisy. When I think about it now, it was a lot louder than the bike I'm riding now, and it did get cut off any more or any less than the other bike. It really came down to defensive driving, and that's the only thing you should be relying on. You ride like you're invisible. You ride like everybody's trying to kill you because they can. And again, you have to acknowledge that people cannot judge your speed. So speed is always a factor in every accident. If you're moving, speed's a factor, right? So it's a bit of a misnomer there, but you get the idea. But the point is that you have to ride even if people see you. Like, for example, the other day, or probably in the middle of this footage, there's a spot, I don't know if it came up yet or not, where I pass a car who's going to turn left in front of me. So I wave at them, you know, and they wave back, so I know they've at least seen me. But because even though I have right away, again, I'm making that connection that they might not be able to judge my speed and think that they can play beat the train, and as soon as they start turning left, I've got no place to go. So the first thing I do is reduce my speed. Uh, you know, I still stand on, you know, the speed, you know, I don't slow right down, but I come out a bit, but I make sure that if the person, even if they're looking straight at me, I wave at them so that they wave back. At least then you know they're looking at you. If they don't wave back, get ready for to do a maneuver, because there's a good chance that person's going to turn into you. Even if they're looking straight at you, you can't assume that they can see you. You can't assume they can judge your speed properly. You can't assume that stuff, and you definitely can't assume that they're going to hear you. And it's just, especially if you're heading straight for them, they won't hear you no matter how loud your bike is. They're not going to hear you coming. And especially if they're sitting in a cage with the windows up, air conditioning on, radio on, whatever, they're not going to hear you. Even with the windows down, the windshield is blocking that sound from coming to you anyway. The only time they hear you is if, you know, basically like the guy you're parked, you're idling in front of, he hears you. Maybe possibly the guy behind him might hear you, but chances are he won't even know you're there, because he won't hear you over the next car. You know, unless there's like 10 bikes there sitting there. It's visual, what you have to rely on here. And then after that, just basic. Again, it doesn't matter if the other guy's in the wrong. You're the one that gets hurt and dies. So make sure that even if you're not seen or heard, that you are a defensive driver. Anyway, that's it. There we go. Have a great day.